now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten, and today we are spoiling the 2024 version of The Crow, a movie I definitely didn't think was ever going to get made. I feel like there's even early episodes of our show tracking all the different people that were attached, and then
Yeah,
leaving.
Momoa at one point for sure.
Bradley
And
Cooper.
yeah, Cooper, that was a big shock for me
Yeah.
to see. But you're right. I definitely did not have high hopes for it to actually get made. As far as I'm concerned, it's a cursed franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the curse continues to live.
Wow. I mean, it certainly didn't make a lot of money if
No.
that's cursed. I admittedly do not have an affinity for The Crow. I think the first time I watched it was for our revisit where I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is good. Like, it seems like they've got a vision and they followed through.
Mhm.
I think, well, I guess we should say the movie, if you've never heard of The Crow, this is similar to the original 94 version with some key differences.
Yes.
But essentially, Shelley, I think is her name. Shelley
Yep.
something Webster or something. But anyway, her name's Shelley, as played by FKA Twigs,
Mhm.
is caught up in some. I don't even know if it's important. It's just there's a guy and he's got dirt on her, and her
Yep.
friend gets that dirt, which I don't like. It doesn't really feel like that would help exonerate her. But anyway, there's dirt on her. The friend
Mhm.
gets it, which then puts the eyes on both of them. And if you've seen the original, you think, oh, this is where she dies. But no, actually, she gets caught by some cops, put into rehab. I'm glad that was confirmed for me. I just kept thinking, why is this jail so laxed with
Yeah,
like,
why are they wearing
letting
pink?
people sit? Yeah, but
Yeah,
anyway,
not
she gets
orange.
put in rehab, which is where she meets Eric, the Crow, and then they have a fun time and get very close. But then they get killed,
Yeah.
and Eric becomes the Crow, and has to get vengeance, or he has to make what's wrong right is the terminology they use.
Yes.
And he has
Which
to
is
keep-
weird in this one.
Yeah, he has to keep believing in their true love. If
Yep.
he doesn't believe in their true love, his powers will go away.
That was a new addition to the lore, which I don't hate,
It was interesting. I
but
just don't
it's
think they used it.
not a good choice in execution.
No, that's. I won't bury the lead here. I found this movie to be flat and
Yep.
yeah, just flat. I guess is the other guy. I don't even know if I have to add underwhelming. It felt flat. Like
Mhm.
there was moments where I was like, yeah, I see what is interesting about this, but it just doesn't translate to the screen.
This is a movie where I'm like, okay, I can respect some of the choices they're making. However, that's good in theory. And like I was the one that was like, hey, let's do The Crow for our rewatch series because I love the original Crow movie. None of the sequels panned out to be good, and that's why I say it's a cursed franchise
Yes,
because not only did Brandon Lee die, it's just like every one of the sequels and TV shows were just like, why do we keep rehashing this? This is
Mhm.
not good. And then lo and behold, they were like, let's do it again, but for 2024. And I'm like, all right. So there were some things where I'm like, yeah, okay. They try to bring in elements of the James O'Barr graphic novel. And for
Mhm.
those of you that are not familiar, the original comic or graphic novel that James O'Barr creates was his way of dealing with his wife's death or fiance's death after she got killed from a drunk driving accident on the way to pick him up.
Right.
So he created that graphic novel as a way to deal with it, and then created all these revenge aspects of it, which were obviously like no one was responsible for but himself. And I think he took aspects of himself to be like, oh, because I was doing drugs at the time, I was doing this, I was doing like to make other characters to be like, we're putting vengeance on myself. None of that tracks through in this one, which is weird because like it's a remake of the original, and I'm like, why would you do the horse stuff, which is a part of the comic book?
Yeah, I read that right before we
Yeah,
started recording.
but why would you not include the very very real characters that were fragmented as a part of what he blames to be his own fault of why his wife is dead? Like, why would you completely ignore that and then sidestep that for a super powered villain where the superpowers were never fully explained and all it just it's a
Oh
weird
yeah.
take on it.
I will say this. One thing, not one thing. The major thing I appreciated was Shelley is an actual character. I don't think she's fully drawn out or realized, but I don't think anyone is in this movie. I think the movie actually probably only works if you are intimately aware of the original movie and the comic.
Yeah.
I would say if you know the comics, it probably isn't that satisfying. But if you know the original movie, you can at least see where it's playing off of those expectations. Like I said, like that moment where you're like, oh yeah, this is how she dies, but you know she hasn't met Eric yet. But it's like, oh okay, like so we're gonna spend more time with her. This is more interesting as a fan of the first one and not wanting to just see the same beats repeated. I think that's interesting, but I appreciate that it wasn't oh his girlfriend died and now he's just gonna beat himself up about it. I like that there was something for him to like work towards, and that I don't even think it was originally the plan in the movie, not in the making of the movie, but in the movie, I think he comes to the realization where he's like, okay, fine, just swap me for her then. I was like, yeah, okay, she gets to live. They can still have the longing and the this sucks, but at least we didn't just kill off the girlfriend to motivate the guy. I like that it's like, all right, well, yeah, then you can swap me out, then take me instead. I think that sums up everything I liked about the movie. That it was like that. I think because of how much time you spend with her and her friends, it would have made more sense to me that she was the crow in this, and you don't try to recreate the '94 movie, and you're just like, this is just a story about Shelley being the crow, and we don't have to connect this to the '94 movie. As I understand in the comics, even it's not always Eric who's the crow, so you don't have to connect it to that. And then, so in a movie where it's very clear they're trying to avoid the fridging problem, you could just make her the crow, and I think the movie would move a bit better as well. It wouldn't feel as flat.
I do agree with that very much because Bill Skarsgård playing Eric in this is just like the version of Eric they want to portray is just not interesting whatsoever.
Well, I
it's
think
just
it
like
only works if you're like, I see what he's doing in conjunction with Brandon Lee. Like, I don't think it works if you're just like looking at him as a new character.
I
feel like you can only. I could be wrong. I think it only works if you know of that Brandon Lee performance. Correct. And you're seeing what he's doing to make it different. But I think what he's doing to make it different makes it worse. And so I can only appreciate like, oh, at least he's trying something different. I wouldn't appreciate it if I'd never seen the original and was just, I don't even think I would have to see the original. I was well aware of like Brandon Lee's Crow, even without seeing it for our revisit. Now that I've seen it, I get the full picture of it, but I don't think any thing in this works really if you're not like judging it against, not even judging, but using it as, okay, this is how they made it different than that '94 movie.
That's exactly how I feel about it. It's just like this only makes sense if you've seen the original, and even then it's just like you're doing a worse version of it because none of this actually makes sense. And I don't know if that's the movie's fault or the director's fault for being like, this is the Eric that we want to portray, or Bill's fault. It's just the idea of like, I like what you said about having her be the crow because she's far more interesting than him. And it seems like there was way more injustice done towards her than him, especially because of the idea of like, okay, that video.
You just know he had a past, but I don't know that. Do they get into what his past is in this? He's just like, oh, you have a past, so do I.
Yeah, the past is very, very straightforward. Yeah, you had a mother that was a drug abuser, and then you had this horse that you loved and that died because your mother was strung out of her mind, so that you just have dealt with grief your whole life. End of story. So I'm just
Yeah,
like,
so I guess he doesn't have a past like hers because hers is I was corrupted by a guy that takes
correct.
innocent souls and takes them to hell.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, I thought he was implying that he did something bad as well. I guess that's also when I thought they were in jail. I generally didn't know that it was rehab until like the end
Mhm.
of the movie. I was just like, this is such a weird jail. Oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, I guess yeah. So even then, so it's just like he has a fundamental misunderstanding of
Yes.
her, and I know that that plays into the whole, well, you got to stay true to your love for her, and then he sees the video, but I'm like, I don't know. I feel like at this point, are you really going to be like, oh, well, then no, I don't want to save her? I feel like that wouldn't negate how you felt about her in this time they showed in the movie.
It doesn't negate anything at all, especially
You could
because
just be like,
let's
oh, that's what she meant when she said she had a past.
yeah, the debate is whether or not that was a weekend or if it was a week, and I don't think it matters. I think the intent there was to be like, this is how much they loved each other, and we're going to show you in chronological order instead of flashbacks like the original. But I
Mhm.
felt like the flashbacks were more effective in the
I
original
think,
because you get snippets that are like his memory and that the highlights versus like now you have to like build stuff and then you have to look at, wait, you're making dumb decisions here. Why are you going back to the same place that you were at the entire time? Why did you expect no one to find you and all that? Like they're making some dumb
yeah,
decisions.
it's no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I
Mhm.
think the only thing I appreciate in it not being flashbacks is that you as the audience can trust that what you're seeing is just what happened and
Mhm.
then make your decision on whether or not they had a good relationship or not. Versus
Yes.
what I didn't like about the first Crow and even like Spawn is like, yeah, seeing it through flashbacks, it's just like, well, this is what the guy remembered, and it's usually just
Mhm.
moments of the woman making him feel good.
Yeah, it's just
So it's not,
objectification of
yeah,
her.
so it's not, yeah, like you don't know the woman in these scenarios. You
Mhm.
just know what made the guy happy about being with that woman. So I do think that showing it this way comes with its problems, and
Mhm.
maybe they outweigh the positive. But like, I still I still appreciated that if we're gonna be doing this for more than an hour and a half, at least it's because you actually get to see them form a relationship.
Yep. I do appreciate that, but everything you said about her being the crow makes fundamentally much, much more sense in the sense where it's her that got taken advantage of
Yes.
by the guy. It's her that actually knows what this guy's capable of and all that kind of stuff. And then like if he died, and like even if they were like, okay, yeah, you didn't step up to the plate because that was a weird part of the movie is the idea of like, yeah, we took your power back. You can actually die now because you had doubt and love
Hmm.
cannot like it would have been
But
like
like it's
really
resolved in that scene. You're like, oh, it's not
exactly.
really, that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, it would have been cool if it was just like, and we're gonna put her up to the plate now and have her do crow things, which would have been really, really cool, right? I really would have liked
I would
that.
have
And
loved that
then
actually. Yeah.
yeah,
I
it
don't know
would have
if
been
love
really
is the right
great.
word, but I would have appreciated it way more than what we got.
Yes, it would have stood out a little bit better as opposed to like, yeah, you didn't take this seriously enough, so we're yeah, you're dead now. And it's like, well, I'll trade my life for hers. I'm like, okay, then let her step up to the plate and do stuff.
Yeah, I guess the way, as you said, the issues that come up is because you spend so much time with her and she's actually a full Fred. She's a main character. No
Yeah.
one is fully like fleshed out here, but she is a main
Yes.
character. It makes me question in real time, like, so why doesn't she get a chance to be the crow? When
Mhm.
it happens, it's like, oh yeah, that's just dumb shit luck, and the crow picked him, and that's it. You're kind of like, whatever, sure. But in this movie, you're like, but you've put so much effort, and also it seems like whoever's doing this is like, we need to get Danny Houston's character, who I know he has a name, but I didn't remember it or care. Uh,
Vincent Rogue.
sure, great. It's
I'm
Vincent.
just I, and
So
I'm just reading that
no,
off
no, that's it's
IMDb.
good that
Yeah.
you said it. It's
Yeah.
good because people would think I would that the podcast as a whole was being dismissive, but only I was only I was being dismissive. But yeah, like she's the one with the relationship with Danny Houston, so it makes more sense that the crow, who clearly has an issue with Danny Houston, would be like, you do it because you know what to do. Then we don't have to waste time with Bill or Eric's character being like,
Mhm.
where is he? Where did he go? It would be like, well, she already knows. So now we can just focus on like the gauntlet she has to go through to get to him, as opposed to him happening upon people that he remembers from that night and being like, oh, okay, you're here, great, now let's fight.
Yeah, because I feel like that's the weakest part of this is the idea of like, okay, he comes back, he has to like right all the wrongs and do justice things, but it's just like he's given it becomes like this detective angle at some point where it's like he has to figure it out and
Hmm.
find all these people and torture them and all that kind of stuff, which is not exciting to me it
No,
at all. It
that's what I
should
mean by
just
flat. Like it's just like,
yes,
yeah, okay, sure, it's gory, but I'm not. I don't really care that this is happening.
yeah, and even then it's just like that one opera scene, which I think honestly that is the best scene in this entire movie because at
It's
least
also
like
the
we're
only time where I felt the music drop matched what was happening. Like obviously
yes.
because they're at an opera, but
Mhm.
while I liked the music drops, I was like, I don't see how this fits with the with what's going on screen. I just like the
Yes.
song, but
Be-
I at least was like, okay, we finally met the overlap where this filmmaker's music taste is matching what's happening on screen. So yes,
right.
the opera scene is by far the most engaging.
Yes. And I will say the music in this one, I didn't enjoy it. It was not there
No,
was too
well, it's
much.
not like the '94 Crow.
No, the
Very
94
clear.
Crow had such a good soundtrack to it, and that's one of the strongest things about it. And that was probably what was used to like mask up a lot of the different things. There was literally I didn't want the exact same soundtrack, but the what was going on here, the choices didn't make sense to
The
me
music
whatsoever,
makes
except for
sense
the
for the
opera.
group that they were hanging out with. Like, so when they show you like that weekend trip they take to the lake or whatever, like that kind of music is should have lived only in that scene, but it just was in
Yes.
everything.
Yep.
So yeah, I think for my taste, I like the music that's in the movie. I don't that, but that's not me saying it was used well in this movie.
Right.
I just
And
so to your point, yeah,
yeah.
the '94 Crow, even though that's music I wouldn't listen to, fits everything about it, and as it's what
Mhm.
it was the biggest compliment I could give that movie, which is it had a very clear vision for what they wanted to execute, and I think they did execute. It's
Mhm.
just not for me, but
Yep.
it was well executed in that sense. Like
Yeah.
everything fit. I wasn't like, oh, why is this music playing? You're like, yeah, this fits the mood. Versus this movie where I'm like, yeah, I like this music, but I don't think it should be playing right now.
Yeah. And it makes less sense to me because it's just like when they first meet Eric and Shelley, it was just this idea of like, oh, he was just a poet and she knew the music stuff. So if she was the crow, the music choices would have made a little bit more sense versus, oh, okay, this is just you remembering songs that you experienced over that cottage weekend kind of deal. And that sucks because it's just like, this isn't driving your angst because this is very angsty. And that's okay. The original Crow is very angsty. That's not a problem. It's just the idea of like, where did this come from? You didn't have any musical inclination. You were just like poet drawing deep emo kid, which is fine. But the music is such a strong part of the original that
Hmm.
I would have thought that they would have really connected with that and brought it forward in a modern day. And I think that would have been cool. And I like what you said is yeah, you like the music here more than the first one, but it doesn't play as strongly into the story the same way as the
Like, it
other one.
doesn't play
Like
at all. Like you're just
exactly.
like even when they're doing this song together, I'm like, why is this happening? And that might
Yep.
just be me not paying attention, but I was just like, I just don't think this. As someone who's made songs, I was like, I don't like watching this right now. Like I just feel so awkward for both of them, and
Mhm.
maybe that's just my process. But I was just like, this isn't the bonding experience I think the movie wants it to be for me.
Mhm.
For me, I'm experiencing this as, oh my god, please just figure it out before you guys come together like this.
Yes, it was not good. It was one of the weakest parts, and that's why I was like, okay, if Shelley does become the crow in this, which it would have been so good from a writing standpoint, from everything. It's just especially because when you consider the fact that oh, Shelley's own mom sold her out
Hmm.
to this guy. It's just like why is Eric getting the revenge? It's like it's weird
This is
that
what
they
I
pay
mean.
so
Like
much attention.
because you spend so much time with the character,
Mhm.
I only think, why the hell isn't she getting a check? Even if it's what you said, like,
Yeah.
okay, so everyone knows how the crow goes and they know that Eric becomes crow, but then you do that partway through the movie where it's like, no, actually it has to be Shelley, and you're like, oh, like we're doing something different. This is interesting now.
It would have been so much more interesting because the idea that they're like, we want to give Shelley more time to develop as a character, even though they didn't do that. It's a good decision because it avoids a misogyny idea of fridging someone, but then they're just going to make another misogynistic decision to be like, no, but it's still Eric. It's still got to be Eric. It still has to be the man.
Powers,
yeah, exactly. It's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
I would have loved it to be like, yeah, you're not the right fit for this. We're gonna send Shelley back, and Shelley's gonna right the wrongs and all that kind of stuff. And if Eric was like, we'll get to the ending later, but like if the ending still was like, yeah, Shelley gives herself up and then Eric like gets to live on, it's just like, okay, does that actually change his character at all? Because I like that, okay, she doesn't have to be with him for him to be like, oh yeah, you can be a little bit brighter now, you can have a little bit more joy and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I don't know, I feel that because the movie is trying very hard, or maybe not very hard, but it made an effort to not fall down the fridging thing.
Yeah.
It actually, on paper, feels like Shelley is the lead. So then you're like, well, why is he getting the powers? And I know we've gone over this already, but it just made me think that, yeah, you when you ask, like, does it change his character? I'm like, I don't even know if it matters because the whole point is Shelley, like, and so she somehow is the lead while being sidelined in her own movie because everyone knows that Eric Draven is the Crow, but it doesn't make sense the way they've set this movie up. And I'm so it's more than dull, I guess. It's just a confused movie as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of weird decisions for sure. It makes a lot of weird decisions. Like honestly, like as a comic, like I love the comic, I love the original. It's my cult vibe for sure, especially for the time that it was in. It worked so well for me, and it lives in my heart. But for me to watch this and be like, okay, why would you make these decisions of showing the horse stuff, which is visually very accurate towards the whole thing, but then go to this degree where you're just messing around with literally everything else? Like, there's no need for the horse at that point. Get rid of the horse. Like, that's not it. Eric isn't even treated as like any kind of character.
No,
he's just like, oh yeah, he grew up in a trailer park. He had drug addicted mom, which makes less sense that they went partying and then he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go and do drugs and MDMA and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that has to be like a straight edge kind of guy, but in the original, he really has a lot of negative things to say about drugs in that. So it makes no sense that they're just popping drugs here.
I did miss that element of, I think in the first one, isn't it that he can like make you feel your sins or something? I know that's closer to Ghost Rider, but that's something he does, right? Like when when there's like the child abuser, he like makes him feel that or something. Yeah, I just feel because this is so streamlined to just kill the people that did this, and then you give the villain the talking thing. But I did appreciate when he tries to talk in Eric's ear at the end, and that you just have to sit there and watch, I guess, Eric's body reject it. And I was like, I guess that's okay. But it at least they address it. But it just feels like, why even give this guy that power?
Yeah, because
it doesn't. I feel like what the friend who was, I think her name's Zadie, is trying to do is be like, hey, now we have video of him telling you to kill someone. But I'm like, but you killed someone. So that you thought like he'd be like, oh, I guess don't show that to anyone or else people, because I don't think there's audio. It's like just a video of him whispering to her and then she kills somebody. So it's do we live in a world where you could use that as an argument? Like, yeah, he didn't just tell me, he told my soul to do it. I didn't have a choice. Like, so, it just feels like someone would look at it and be like, yeah, he told you to do it and you killed someone.
It's still your fault. Like, yeah, you're still holding fucked. The knife. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's like, okay, maybe he was an accessory to the thing, but whatever. It's this weird thing where I'm like, okay, why is this a problem? Because the cops aren't after you.
Yeah, you could have
When they
just.
caught you with the drugs, with the cocaine, they
They
put
weren't
you
like,
in
"Oh, this is the
rehab. They didn't
person."
put you exactly. They didn't. It wasn't like Shelly's life was in danger. It was just like, yeah, one dead body, no, and
The
like,
friend put her in danger, which I know the movie
yes,
touches on because she says, "Why did you do this?" But it's like,
yeah,
then we need to go back further and understand why the friend would think this was a good idea.
yeah, and then it makes no sense to me because it's just like, okay, if this guy Danny Huston playing
Houston.
Vincent or Houston playing Vincent or all that kind of stuff is that bad? I thought they were doing like, okay, I liked how the original, how there was that guy with his sister that was like the head orchestrator of Devil's Night and like
Hmm.
the corruption of Detroit. That made a lot of sense to me that it's like, okay, it's corruption that got her killed in the first place. She was trying to do the right thing by standing up for the evictions and all that kind of stuff. That subplot got written into Shelley's character, and I appreciated that because it like made sense of why it was they were killed. It
Hmm.
wasn't just a random killing. There's nothing here that indicates that. It's just like, well, why did Vincent want that girl at the party killed in the first place? What was that all about? And then what was any of this all about? Like,
Yeah, because
what's he
it's like
tied
this
into?
confusing thing of like he takes innocent souls to hell,
Yes,
but then why add that extra layer of? But then he can tell you what to do, and then you kill yourself. But then some people are killing themselves, some people are killing other people, and which of these souls are the ones he's getting, and why? Like, why is he even choosing these people? Because if it has to be an innocent soul,
hmm
surely you don't have to be like in the clubs to do that. Like, you could just.
you just find anyone.
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
just find anyone
It
and
felt
do
like
anything.
it was targeted on these like people that society wouldn't look at. So then I don't know why you're adding like the whole. It has to be an innocent soul that he's collecting. It just feels like
Right.
you could just get souls.
Yeah. Because the thing is, when they started opening with the B-roll shots of Chicago, I was like, oh, okay, Chicago setting. This actually makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense from the crime rates and all that kind of stuff, and not like I like the original was set in Detroit.
Hmm.
This one's in Chicago. I'm like, okay, where are they going to go with like political corruption in Chicago? Are they going to go nothing? Literally nothing. It was
No,
just
where
like
it is isn't important. I didn't even know that they were saying it was Chicago.
they didn't say it was directly. I'm
Like
just like, I
obviously
remember those
the
trains.
yeah, you're.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Like you
Yeah.
saw the landmarks because I'm pretty sure like they filmed in some like Eastern European city where
Yeah,
it's
they
like
ended up doing non-committal stuff and then just like, oh,
yes,
okay. So the backdrop of the setting isn't even important versus the
no,
original one was. It
yeah.
was just like, what the hell's happening right now?
Yeah, I
Because you can
just was
make the
confused by
case
the
that,
bad guy. I was
yeah,
just like, I don't know why he needed this. I've heard people say they like that it meant that that wasn't the only magic in there. But as you mentioned, like I feel like the first movie also was like these people are like well, someone was another type of bird, wasn't they? Weren't they like a witch?
no, there was no other bird. It was, well, I mean, like
No, there was
the
like a witch in
sister.
the first one, right?
You could say, yeah, you could say that she was a witch, but she didn't have any powers or anything like
Oh,
that.
then
She
never
was the one
mind. I
that
take it back.
connected the idea that, like, oh, it's the crow that's giving him powers and all that
Got
kind of
it.
stuff. And then she captured the crow and killed the crow and took away his powers, which makes sense.
Then never
But
mind. I take it back.
here, none of that even happens. Like, there's no connection to that, which is weird because it's like he's like Vincent's like, how'd you get this power and all this is like brand new to him and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, wait, what? But what is this place? Kind of, I'm like, but you've been dealing with this deal with the devil, trading souls for your immortality. How do you
He
not
should
know
have
about the
known more.
limbo? He
Yeah.
should have known more. It makes no sense that he knows nothing. It should have been like, I don't know who ended up being the EMT at the end of it. That guy that was like
Yeah.
explaining everything was it should have been like he knew, oh, my old friend Wickham and all this kind of stuff, and have this huge backstory. But no, none of that happened at all. It's
No,
just
the movie
so
was
weird.
only interested in being like, we have to spend more time with them as a couple.
Yes.
And then everything else was like, you get the idea. You've seen the first movie.
Yeah, yeah. And then here's like a really good, and then here's a really, really good choreographed fight scene in the opera,
Yeah.
which at the end of it makes no sense too, because it's like, why did you, for the curtain
Because
call, have bring out the decapitated heads and throw it at why did you just traumatize everyone in there? I can accept the fact that
also,
everyone was on the payroll for Vincent that he killed, but why are you just literally now destroying, traumatizing everyone else? It makes no
Because
sense.
weren't they screaming before he threw the heads? So it just felt like,
No. Well, I guess they were.
yeah,
I guess they were,
remember
but
them. I remember him walking out, and I'm like, sure, you might know that this isn't part of the opera, but also like the imagery beforehand was still pretty like ridiculous. That I don't know that I would scream right away the way they were screaming.
Yep.
When he walked out.
Mhm.
I think once he starts throwing and people are like, "Holy fuck, this guy chopped heads off," then yeah, you gotta go. But it seemed as if they were committed to screaming just the mere sight of him, which, to your point, doesn't track because they're not the ones that are evil and thinking like, "Oh my god, we're gonna get retribution too." Presumably like 80% of the people there are just patrons of the arts, and not bad guys. Unless I missed it and they're all the bad guys.
Well, and that's the biggest thing is like if they're making that comment on society of like high class being corrupt and all that kind of
No,
stuff,
I mean just
it would
connected
make
to Vincent.
sense. But
Not-
even
yeah.
then, no, it's just one singular person. It's Vincent that is the problem. But then what is the actual problem here? I don't get it. It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, sure, objectively, not great that he's killing people or like manipulating people to do his dirty work for. But at the end of the day, to your point, it is Shelley's journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Eric's journey whatsoever. Eric just got the powers because everyone's like, yeah, we want Eric Draven to, and he doesn't even have a last name here. It's just Eric, right? So we want Eric is the Crow. Let's get him to be the Crow. And I'm like, no, the way you've written this, Shelley makes way more sense as the Crow. I don't care what anyone says. This is dumb. The fact that they kept Eric as the Crow, especially because there was that reevaluation point in the middle.
Yeah,
it could have been like,
you didn't believe in the love.
Yeah,
which I still
Shelley still
understand.
does though. So Shelley's up. Like that would have made so much sense. Like Shelley's like loving you and all this kind of stuff. We're gonna show you what true love looks like with vengeance. And I'm like, okay, that wouldn't have been great dialogue. None of the dialogue here is really, really good, but that's okay because the first one wasn't good at all. It was just like, all right, well, it's a product of its time. It is what it is. Now it's just where are we actually going with this? Because the part that's really confusing to me is like, okay, Eric had a friend, the tattoo guy, and when he gets killed, it's like there's no like regret about that. Eric's just like, oh, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine in the original if like the kid got killed that he'd be like, yeah, whatever. He loves that kid and was just like, no, I can't confuse you by showing you that I'm alive and all this kind of stuff. I get that. But the idea of here, it's just like, wait, my friend's dead.
Oh,
well. I guess that's how it goes. I'm like, what kind of vengeance is this?
I think that's why I felt it was flat. Because I think Bill Skarsgård is he doesn't have to do like what he did for Pennywise, but I think he's a very engaging actor. Yes. And none of that was really on display here. Yeah. Everything felt like he was kind of just like, yeah, whatever. Like when his friend got shot, but just everything felt like, yeah, whatever. Yep. Okay. I guess we're doing this.
Yeah.
So I didn't fully understand why you would cast such what I think is intense and engaging actor to not deliver that. Especially when you're like dead set on him being the lead in this way as the Crow.
I'm more convinced that it was A, getting a big name in this, which he is, and then B, his aesthetic, his shirtless scenes and all that kind of. He's ripped. No,
his look, yeah. But this isn't the first movie this guy's made. He understands like how it should work if you're gonna be building your movie around a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get that. That to me comes down to direction. I only said it because obviously I know he can do this, and I'm saying that as someone like seeing him in something like Barbarian, where he's not going over the top or going crazy. You're still engaged in his performance because he's very aware of what he's trying to accomplish and what needs to happen in any given scene, and you can see him play that stuff. This felt like he was told kind of just like, just be a comic book guy. Like, you're just a cool guy. Just cool. And that's not what you would hire Bill Skarsgård for, in my opinion.
No.
I get it that he looks a certain way, but the bonus of that is he can also act. So let him do that.
Hmm. Hmm. The director for this, by the way, is what's his face? Rupert Sanders. And this is his track record from what I'm seeing right now. Ghost in the Shell,
Yeah, that's not
Snow
a
White
good
and the
one.
Huntsman, also
But I
not
think
good.
people like that.
People like it more than Ghost in the Shell, I would say. But
Ghost
like
in the Shell is a terrible misfire that shouldn't
it's
have happened.
a it's oh God, it's rough. It's rough. But it's just not not a good track record. So I don't know if it was just like, did they give this movie an actual chance?
Well,
What's
no, I
going on
think he would
here?
be in director jail after Ghost in the Shell. So this might be just a you get this movie because we can tell you what to do.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Because it does feel like this is there was so many notes, and the committee was like, keep this, do this, all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
It felt like that. There was no singular vision towards this.
No,
Um,
unlike the original '94 one, which I still have to give it props for.
yeah, yeah, and it's funny that James O'Barr is an actual writer on this, was credited as a writer.
But I'm sure
Because I'm
you'd
just
be
like,
credited on all of them.
yeah, yeah, he would be. I think he is. But it's just like, if you had some input into this, like, what's going on? What's happening with the writing here? Because
Yeah, he just has a based on comic book characters credit.
okay, it's not like he actually wrote.
Yeah,
Okay,
so he would
got it.
in a just world everybody would get that who's a comic book creator, but they don't,
Sure,
unfortunately.
right.
But I think he was dead set on this other version of the movie where they were just going to do a black and white adaptation of the comic. Like, just I don't ever think that's a good idea. But
That's not a good idea.
I think if you're doing it in a different medium, you should make it different enough that it's worth
Yes.
the time and effort that you're doing. Like, people will have that comic to read if they need that very specific
Mhm.
sensation. I don't think you need
Yeah.
to do, but that's what he fell in love with, and maybe he's just on. Maybe yeah, I don't know how involved he is in this one. I think there was a version
Yeah.
of the movie that he wanted to see happen, and was kind of cheering on, and then
Right.
this one he probably was like, well, at least they're making it. And I don't mean that in a cynical like, at least I'll get paid. I think he might have just been like, all right, well, at least like this, obviously creating something like that, you do hope that it lives on. And so maybe he would just be happy, like, yeah, okay, it will live on with this movie.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like it's just like, okay, we've tried multiple times and we know we can like and this is me projecting and thinking in the mind of James O'Barr, but it's just like I can't have this franchise have so many terrible reiterations. We have to end on a high note at the very, very least. And let's try this again in 2024 and see what we can do, right? It's just, but this just did not work.
No.
It did not. The first was by far the best one. And even then, that has a lot of problems with it. For sure, it has a lot of problems with it. But this is just like, what are we doing here? There's no cohesive vision. And like you said, the original, it had a cohesive vision,
Yeah,
and they executed it very, very well. This did not. They were just like, let's put all our money into the opera scene.
that is what it feels like. It's the most
Mhm.
alive the movie feels.
Yep.
It yeah, it's the most alive the movie feels. I think that's the only real compliment I can give it.
Yeah.
It just everything else feels so flat to me that I'm just
Mhm.
like, at least during the opera scene, I'm like, okay, look, let's see where this goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just I feel another thing that would help is if Eric and Vincent met earlier,
Mhm.
like some sort of them making it personal for the two of them, or at least on Eric's behalf, because
Mhm.
up until that point, he's just like, yeah, where's this guy? I guess I gotta kill him because
Mhm.
it's his fault that my girlfriend's dead. But he doesn't feel any way about that person. But like, he could have just as easily have found Vincent and killed him right away and been like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like we were on a journey with him. It was just
Mhm.
like he got his marching orders. And I did like that when that guy was like, "This is what you got to do," and he said, "Why should I trust you?" He's like, "I mean, you don't have another choice." There was like no attempt. There was no attempt to be like, "Don't you understand why this is important?" He was just like, "What are you gonna do? Not trust me? Don't be silly."
See, I think it would have made more sense if Vincent was like, oh, he loved using Shelley as his soldier, and that was his primary soldier. And then like Eric saw that interaction or something like that, and Shelley wound up dead or something like. It's just like and he killed both of them. Like it would have made more sense because he would have been like, okay, he's got something to do with this. I got to go after him. But like literally when they die, it's just like, wait, why are you doing this? I don't understand. And he doesn't know any of the backstory behind Shelley because like she doesn't tell anything. So it's just again getting to
And I
that detective
still
part
don't know
sucked.
like what his worry was. If you can talk to people and tell them to do things, like couldn't he just talk his way out of it? Like I don't know. I just don't see how that footage would do anything to him unless there was audio, which I don't feel like they played any audio. Like
There was a little bit of audio, but it was more like
you can't hear
people
him say
screaming.
you need to kill this person.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would have
It
been
was
like, oh, he said something to her that probably like. That's the thing. I don't know what this world is. So is this a world where people would be like, oh, he must have the ability to control people?
like that. And to me,
it doesn't
I'm like,
feel like that plays into anything.
it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It's not a world where there's
So he
superhero
could just
power
be like,
people.
I didn't say anything, and there's nothing that they can't prove that he said you got to kill somebody.
Yeah, because the evidence is more clear that okay, Shelley was holding a knife. Shelley should definitely go to jail. You know what I mean? That's what it's
All
like,
this
in a
will
court
do
of
is
law,
put
that's
it in front of
100%.
people that'll be like, you're going to jail.
Yeah, Shelley would have been like,
Case closed.
and I like the fact that she's like, Sadie's like tries to gaslight her immediately out of self-preservation because that makes sense. Is the idea of like, well, you have this video, you're gonna get us killed. What are you doing here? It makes no sense what Sadie's doing. It makes absolutely zero sense, and it's just like, okay, if you can't prove this in a court of law with this video evidence, and every single time Vincent does do the whisper thing, it's nonsensical, like demon language.
Yeah,
so
like,
it's
you
just
can't
like,
hear what he's saying, or you
yeah,
can't decipher what he's saying.
yeah. And even if he is kind of doing that, then it's just like, okay, again, bring that evidence to court and be like, he controlled her, he's the real murderer. Like, what? That's
You're
not going to
still
work.
going to jail. Like,
Yeah.
just because you take him down with you, does it? I think if your thing was we got to get out of this or else we're gonna go down, which is the only thing I can understand from this move, you're still going down. You're going down with him though, so you didn't help anything.
Exactly.
It can only work if you're like, you know what, like, doesn't matter if we go to jail, we have to stop this guy.
Yeah, that would make the most sense, but they have no interest in that. They were just like,
No,
hey,
that's
let's
not
drop, let's just do a couple of house parties and like dance to house music and drop some MDMA, and that's basically our love weekend and all that kind of stuff. None of this is discussed. Makes no sense. And it's I don't even know what age they're trying to play in this. Very disturbing to me. It's just like, wait, this dialogue would make more sense for teenagers. Clearly, they're not teenagers.
Oh, right, they didn't go to jail. I keep thinking they went to
They're
jail.
in rehab,
So they'd have to be adults if they went to jail like that with other adults, but they're not in jail. So I don't know.
Well, the assumption is that they are adults. That's my assumption.
Yeah.
I want to say it's early 20s because it's the only way I can kind of excuse some of it. But even then, it's just like none of it makes sense.
I think you're right. They would have to be young and dumb because like FK Twigs is 36 and Bill is like 34, 33. So they're full on adults. It's not. That's not how they should be living. But they have to be early 20 somethings.
Yeah, because the way they wrote the two characters makes sense of like why they would be so toxically in love, like in such a fast, like whirlwind way. That makes sense to me because it's like, okay, yeah, the broken people looking for broken people and all that kind of stuff. That makes so much sense to me
that too. She's like, you're so beautifully broken or whatever.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, but you're not actually leaning into any of that because broken people start to like tell people about their past and trauma dump and all that kind of stuff. And Shelley had nothing like that. She was just like, I'm not telling you about my past. If there's, you just love me harder. Just do this. Just do this.
Mhm.
And it's just like, this is why it needed more than a weekend to flush out, to be like, hey, I have to tell you something.
I think
This
it is. It's
guy,
more than a weekend.
I think so,
I,
because of the cottage thing. But
well,
like, even
I
then,
think you're just watching. This is just what they do. I don't think it's
right.
supposed to feel that element is supposed to feel like it's happening in real time. I think you
Mhm.
are just supposed to be, yeah, this is what they do. This is what makes them happy.
Yeah, sure. But it's just and it again makes no sense, because it's just like, hey, Eric, your mom was a drug addict. Why are you so into drugs so easily?
I think they forgot about that part.
I,
Something tells
I
me
think they
that
absolutely
I
did.
think that stuff was added later because
Mhm.
it's stuff you don't need Bill for or any of the main cast for.
Yep.
And it probably was added, and then you just get to the movie and you're like, ah, yeah, I guess that would be something that he would consider if he was at all a character.
Mhm. Yeah, he's not even a character in this movie.
Again, I don't think anyone is. No
You're
one
right.
feels, no one who is supposed to, like, in a traditional movie that would be considered a main character feels like anything other than, you, come on, you get it. It's the Crow.
Yeah, yeah.
You know
It's
where
just
this
like,
is going.
it's just the titular character. That's about it. And there's no actual character development within that. It's just like a guy being like, yeah, you just didn't vengeance hard enough. And it's so weird. It's just like, what?
Because,
I didn't.
I don't think his thing is you need to do vengeance. His thing is you'll have the power to right wrongs as long as you believe in your love in her. And
Which
so
is,
to me is not revenge because it's not tied to his personal growth. It's just tied to like, hey, look, we need to get rid of this Vincent guy.
mhm.
And since you love her and he killed her, you're probably gonna do this.
Yeah.
But it's not like, hey, I like, he didn't go to this guy being like, I need you to help me because this is what I need to do, and then he becomes like an Alfred or like a reluctant, like, oh, I guess I'm gonna help you. He is the one that's like, oh yeah, great, you're here, you woke up, good. So this is what needs to happen now.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
he never changes that. Like at no point is he like, I can see this is weighing on you, or maybe you're not like. Yes, he says you're not right, but it's just because you broke the one rule I told you, and it doesn't really matter because you're gonna keep going anyway. Like,
Yeah.
like
Just make
we're
this
gonna resolve
trade.
this as soon as I bring it up. It'll be resolved. Don't worry about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I think, as I said, if you know the comics, this would have to be a bummer because it removes the very specific view here, which is, fucked up shit happens and no one really is to blame for these things, but you're going to take it out on yourself. Like that element, so you're going to make people hurt because you're hurting about this,
Mhm.
and that's not factoring into this by design. But that would be disappointing if that was like when people talk about adapting and knowing how to keep what makes that thing unique intact when you're doing the adaptation. So that would be a bummer. And then for me, who just saw the '94 version, I'm like, okay, I see where they zigged, where the other movie zagged. That's
Mhm.
at least interesting in terms of like why are we even doing this? And I guess that's a thing, but it's still not the Crow in that sense. Like it's just
Mhm.
fundamentally not the Crow in terms of everything you've laid out in terms of what James O'Barr wanted to do.
Mhm.
So whether or not that would be more interesting to me to not redo that is irrelevant because it's still a movie that's like, but we're still doing the Crow, even though we don't actually know what makes the Crow a unique character.
Yeah.
Outside of just being a Liam Neeson revenge thriller.
That's, I mean, that's 100%. You nailed it. It's got nothing based on the original. It's got really. It's just like, here's the aesthetic, here's what we're going for, here's the setting, and then those are the only things. Like, this is one of those movies that's, they've got some beautiful cinematography shots in here. They absolutely do. I think it's really, really great. But then the whole, and I love the idea that, okay, if they're going to remove the backstory that Eric is, because in the original he's a ballet dancer, he's a performer and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
right? In the '94 he's a rock star, and they have those masks in the apartment and all that kind of stuff with like about the drama masks and all that. I like the fact that in this one it's like, okay, it's tied to the tattoo. Um and that kind of doubles down on how he gets that aesthetic in the end, but it's just like nothing about Eric would indicate that. It's just like, okay, you're just a guy that's just too emo. You don't have any creationism part of this. You're not an interesting character. You're boring. You're really, really boring. And it's just like until you become the Crow, you're not really interesting. And even when you become the Crow, it's just like, cool, look at the fight scene.
Yeah,
That's
I didn't feel
about
like there
it.
was a difference between him
There
and.
literally is none.
I mean, I think I liked when they're like, "Hey, this black blood is what makes you go between the things," but then
Mhm.
they didn't really use it till the end. I feel like that he
Right.
doesn't use it. I guess that's the only person he's going to use it on. So maybe it is just an issue with the overall setup for the movie that he can't do anything Crow-like until he gets to Vincent,
Mhm.
because everyone else before that is just him trying to collect data on where to find Vincent,
Mhm.
and so you're just like, okay, this is just it just seems like it's just a Liam Neeson revenge movie
That's
until
yeah.
the bad guy tries to talk him into, I assume, killing himself, and he's like, "No, my black blood won't let that happen, and now you're gonna be stuck in the black blood." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, but I guess we're done with it already."
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, all that build up for just that was it. All right, I
Yeah,
guess we're done now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, they
it's
still have to do the beats where it's like he wakes up and, as you said, the EMT is the guy that was talking to him the whole time, and
mhm.
Shelly wakes up, and I guess that's where Eric is doing the like voiceover, like, "We'll meet up one day, I guess."
Yeah.
But then I'm like, what a bummer that it's like.
But
I mean, I guess I'll just wait till you die of old age. I guess so. That'll be fine.
well, I mean, it's fine that it's that tragic, but my thing to
No,
me
I don't
is
think it's tragic. You're just kind of like, all right. Well, I mean, everything worked out the way you wanted it to, so it doesn't feel
sure, yeah.
tragic.
But so, and this is the part that really, really sucks is okay. So through the deal he makes with Wickham, the guy with the EMT, that ends up in the end, it's just like, yeah, but your soul's gonna be in like the worst part of hell after you do this. So it's like even if she dies of old age, she's not gonna get to the worst place of hell unless she like continues to be the shitty like, and not even that she's a shitty person. It's just that she murdered someone based on influence of something else. It's like there's nothing objectively shitty about you. You're just a lost soul, right? You're just
So,
fragmented from what the
was
movie's
that the
willing to
deal?
tell
So
us.
I know what you're saying. You're saying that the reason she didn't end up where he ended up, in limbo,
Mhm.
that is because that's part of the deal that what's his face makes. Although I
Yep.
don't think he was there to, because doesn't it like he has to consume their blood or something? I don't know.
No, so that's the Vincent thing, I think. The
No, but
Wickham
that's what I'm
thing
saying. Like,
is
but Vincent didn't consume her blood, did he? Or did they take
no.
her? So she only would get sent to hell if he did that. Like, that's the thing. It would be her soul is a foregone conclusion because he did that "I got your soul" thing to her. But
Right.
he didn't get to finish the thing. It's just she just got killed by some people, his
Yes.
people, but not. He wasn't in the room to finish whatever ritual needs to finish, so that the souls go straight to hell.
Right.
So then, to me, it becomes I'm just swapping places with you, and I'm not actually going to hell. I'm just dead the way you were dead.
Well, she was going, and this is the part of the movie. I'm like, none of this tracks. Is you're absolutely right with the blood exchange thing to be like, hey, this is the signal that this is the person I'm sacrificing for my
Mm-hmm.
longevity or my immortality or whatever. But the idea of like that wasn't done with Shelley, so why is it that she's going to the darker part of hell and not recoverable, and then like, you know,
Yeah, This
it's
has happened
still.
before. Maybe I missed something because it feels
I
like she
don't think you
wouldn't.
did. I don't think you did.
She wouldn't be in hell because he didn't get to finish the thing.
Well, I this is where the movie's logic is just inconsistent in its own right. Like none of it makes sense
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like, well, Vincent, if the whole thing predicates on that video that they have. It's the idea of like, why did Vincent want that original girl dead? And then why is it that Shelley wasn't sacrificed after that and just allowed to live? Because the idea of like, okay, it seems to me that if you're trading souls for immortality, you can probably get ahead of the curve and be like, here's two souls at one time, hell. take Shelly and the person that I wanted killed, and then we're gonna do her mother later on and all this kind of stuff, right? What?
I think
It's so
the
weird
idea is
because he just
still
kills
needs
people,
to like kill other people, so his hands are clean, quote unquote. So
which is
maybe that's
weird because
what her mom did, was be like, oh, I know you take souls, but if I give you my daughter as your like killer, then you won't
Mhm.
take her soul right away.
maybe, but that wasn't explicitly clear. Like I don't,
No, I'm
I
not
think
saying
you
this
were
is
paying
well thought out.
attention,
I'm trying to think of what
like
the
a
deal is
scenario
here.
where, yeah,
And that's what makes sense to me in the moment. But again, I I found the movie flat, so I was not paying attention the full time. Like it's one of those
mm-hmm,
movies where I was like, I think if I was in a theater, I would have fallen asleep.
mm-hmm.
And since I watched it on VOD, whenever I was like, I get what's going on here, I would look at my phone.
Yeah.
But I think people who are engaged and like the movie will probably have the answers we're looking for.
So I was engaged because I was just like, please let all the critics be wrong about this because I love The Crow so much, and they were not wrong about this. This was just an inconsistently done movie where they're just
Hmm.
like, we want to get all these ideas into one thing. And as a result of that, nothing was properly explored, executed, or whatever, or even a proper story was told because the logic of its own story didn't even make sense. It's just like the idea of why did what's why is Vincent so bad? Is the discussion here is like aside from him doing obvious like I'm going to kill stuff for my
Well, I
own
think
self-preservation, why was Vincent so bad? Because in the original, again going back to that guy with the long hair, oh, he was the orchestrator of Devil's Night. He's the actual one making crime
yeah,
real bad in Detroit. That's very clear. That's understanding.
but
But
that's
in
why the
this,
first one has a cop, like Ernie Hudson as a cop in it, trying to
yes,
like solve something, and this one does not have that element.
yep,
It's just someone from beyond the grave being like,
mhm,
we need to stop this guy because he keeps taking people who shouldn't be going to hell to hell. So that answers that question for me. Like that's the
yes,
long and short of it. Is just the only reason this is an issue is because he died and then went to limbo. And this
mhm,
guy's like, great, you're here. Help us with this thing we've been working on.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I need any other motivation for Wickham other than this is what he needs, is someone to
Sure.
get rid of this guy.
Mhm.
I just don't understand why they wrote the villain the way they did. Like it feels like overcomplicated, eh, based on how little they want to actually engage with it.
That's the problem I have with this movie is the idea it's both overly complicated, but at the same time too boring and too flat. Like you said,
Hmm.
it's just like you gave this a lot of thought, but then nothing else, like everything else is inconsistent the amount of thought it was or attention it was given. So like, why do any of this? It just doesn't track well. It's okay, sure.
Yeah, I
My
also didn't feel there was a
assumption,
good connection between Eric and the physical crow that you saw. Like I saw it
yeah.
sometimes leading him places, but I'm like, I just feel like the first movie did a better job, and you don't need to
Hmm.
have the whole, if you kill the crow, you kill him. Like just having them have some form of chemistry or connection.
Yeah. I see. I'd rather it be there is no Wickham, and that he's
That was a
just
complaint I had about
talking.
the first movie,
Yeah,
and I wanted someone like Wickham to walk him through what the powers are. Like it, it's the only favorable thing I have about Spawn is like at least you got like the old guy that's like this is how you do it,
sure,
and it's because I think when you do stuff like that, you need to give people the rules of the world because it's not a world we live in.
hmm,
So without things like that, like yeah, sure, later on a bad guy can be like, oh, if you kill the crow, you kill him, but we're not given the guide that helps him and gives us some form of um letting us into what needs to happen through being able to talk to someone who actually knows what needs to happen.
sure.
Even if
I
he's not a
guess.
mentor, like I do think you need, I appreciated having a Wickham there to be
Hmm.
like, this is what needs to happen.
See,
These are the rules.
I thought it was stronger in the first one that there wasn't a Wickham in the sense where it's like, okay, we're left to decide and figure this out and interpret ourselves. It's more engaging that way. With Wickham just laying it all out on the table, you're just like, well, then can you explain the Vincent thing and why we're going after Vincent? Because it does that doesn't make sense. What you said about like, oh, he's sending people that shouldn't be going to hell as a thing, and I'm like, he's giving back. It's like, okay, that makes sense, but that's not something the movie goes into. That's
Well,
something
I
that
feel like
you
It
created,
seems like
and
you're
I'm
saying
like,
two
that
things
makes
at once. Then I'll let you know that, because you're saying
okay.
you don't like that things were overly explained with him, but then when
Yes.
the movie did give you an opportunity to make your own connections, you didn't like that either.
Well, it's because that's what I mean. It's inconsistent. It's like, if you're going to explain this part of it, also explain why we're going after Vincent. At
But I
least be
don't think
consistent
you
with
need
it.
to explain why they're going. I think that is very evident.
Fair.
There's no ambiguity there to me
Sure.
about why someone who represents closer to heaven would be against a guy that's sending people to hell.
Fair enough.
There's nothing about that seems ambiguous.
Right. I mean, that's fair.
I think what you're saying makes sense. That if you have a Wickham, it takes the opportunity for people to make their own. But I don't think. I also think what you said proves my point, which is you do need someone to be to giving you at least some kind of goalposts for you to be able to be like, all right, got it. I can make the connections in between these landmarks here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, yeah. It's just, it's a weird thing. This. So one thing I will say is that, uh, in I believe it's the Edward Furlong version of The Crow, the sequel, they try to tie it directly to culture, in like Mexican culture and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, okay, because I hate the abstractness of it. It's like, in some cultures, they believe the crow is like this. And I'm like, okay, commit to a culture then. Like,
Yeah.
commit to it. Don't just say some and then give us Eric and then Shelley and just be like, oh, which culture are we talking about here? Was that culture important to either one of these characters? Is like, are we living in that world, or is it just like, sometimes this happens and it could be agnostic the way it happens? It's just, if there's a big enough injustice, it's weird that they're like, in some cultures this happens.
I think what I get from that is they're saying it's like when Thor is like, yeah, you guys call this magic, to us it's just science. I think what they're saying is, yeah, there are cultures that are almost tapped in to what is just a fact of life.
Yeah.
Which is, these crows do these things. So they're not saying it only works if you're part of these cultures. They're saying this is how life works, and some cultures actually know that.
Sure. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. It makes a little bit more sense. Not that this movie does.
No, I just, we've talked about this. I don't need to think something is good to at least give it credit for not doing something dumb.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I just always want to make sure that criticisms are above board. Not that you were doing that. I'm saying in general. Like, my knee-jerk reaction is, we could not like it, but let's be clear about like what actually went wrong here.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I don't say that to say you were off in what you're saying. I just think that you were asking a valid question, and that was my interpretation of what was going on.
Right.
Is they are saying this is just a fact of life.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting that some people have touched on it in their cultures, but it's like, that kind of is irrelevant because it doesn't take them believing in it to be true.
True. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, if Eric was like atheist and it's like, oh, there is a heaven and a hell and a limbo, the Catholics got it right, kind of deal. It wouldn't have mattered if he was or not. It's just what the rules would have applied. I see your point there.
Yeah, it would have been something for his character to go through if that was a thing, but the movie is saying it's irrelevant. We don't need you to believe.
Fair enough.
It just is what it is.
Sure. Yeah, this movie is a movie.
Yeah, they got it done. I'm happy. I know that it's not easy to make a movie, and they got it out in theaters in a world where a lot of things just go straight to streaming.
True.
Like, never mind. I won't use that example. But yeah, they got the movie out and they put it in theaters. So I hope that is a win in and of itself for them, because the movie does not work for me.
No.
And I think it's a testament to how much it doesn't work, because you like the lore, you like the first movie, you like the comics, so it feels like you'd be more primed to give it you as Ben, not I'm not saying
Yes.
every person is like this. You as Ben would be more primed to give it leeway or find what's good about it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go into these things like some people where it's like, well, if it's not everything I want it to be, then it fucking sucks. Like you were
Oh,
like, you know
absolutely
what, like
not.
this is what they did that worked. All right, great.
Yeah, because I'm done. I'm done doing that. Like the idea of like you get into the idea of like comic book purists as well. Like, no, it was then like this in the comics. I'm like, but this isn't in the comics.
Yeah, you got
There's
to do
it's a
something
totally
different.
different medium, and it's just like if we are doing the exact thing from the comics, what is the point? What are
Yeah,
we
just
doing here?
tell people to go read the comics then.
Yeah, it's just like okay, if we're doing a different medium, if we're doing something different, even if they were like it's a remake of the original, I'm like you need to change something to
Mhm.
make me actually compelled to explore this world. Otherwise, why remake the original? Well, the original was the best one out of every attempt. Why remake the best one? It just doesn't make sense. It's just like
But
okay, we're just doing The Crow in 2024. That's cool to me, sure. However, thematically link back at least to the identity of what the original movie slash
mhm.
comic is, and this one just completely like it does the wrong things with it. It's just like, hey, remember that horse? That's a big part of the graphic novel. We're gonna put that in for all you comic book purists. However, literally nothing else is going to be the same, and we're going to do it in a linear fashion, and which again, because of the fridging issue and the misogyny behind that, they addressed, but then they still committed to making Eric the Crow, which is
Yeah,
stupid.
yeah,
It's just like, what are we doing here?
yeah. I think I've seen it posted more often that like people who get upset about remakes should be more upset that they don't try to just remake things that didn't actually work.
Yep.
Like if you're gonna remake something, then yeah, why not do it so that you can make it better as opposed to, you know, this thing everyone loves and agrees is just good. Let's do that again. Like it's like,
Yeah.
well, or like the original, like not the original, but the '80s Scarface was like, let's do this differently so that
Mhm.
when we do it, it's updated, or Wizard of Oz for that matter. Like
Mhm.
people think Judy Garland thing isn't a remake. That is a remake, and they made it better. So it's like
Yeah.
you could just do things where it's like this is an idea people know but don't think worked the first time around, and we
Mhm.
can make it better. But I don't think anyone who, I shouldn't say anyone. I think the only reason people are talking about The Crow 30 years later is because they liked the first one and they
Yep.
don't feel the need to be like, well, if you just tweaked this, it would have been better.
Yeah. It's that's the point. You're absolutely right about that. There should be more evidence of we'll remake movies that had a good idea, a good concept, but wasn't fully done properly. Like when they did, when they're remaking Dune, I'm like, yeah, that's a good movie to try to remake because the first one it was just there's too much going on. It just the technology wasn't there, and you couldn't tell a cohesive story. The
Well,
way they redid it now, I'm like,
yeah,
okay, this makes sense.
but I think also this is the last thing I'll say about Dune because this is the Crow
Yeah.
episode. Is having I watched the David Lynch Dune after I saw the Denis
Mhm.
Villeneuve, and like what is upsetting about that one is that it still doesn't understand that Paul is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like even the author's like, do you understand? I'm saying this is bad. Like this guy is bad. So Denis Villeneuve, I got that from the first Dune, but in the second Dune, they're like, no, this guy's the fucking bad guy.
Yeah.
So like, I think that is as you said, a valid reason to remake something, which is
Mhm.
everyone. I keep using words like that. Just allow me the hyperbole. Everyone
Yeah.
knows Dune, but why not remake it now that we can, as a society, understand that messiahs are a bad thing
Mhm.
and that the white savior trope was actively being mocked in the original text. And
Mhm.
so we should make a movie that reflects that as opposed to the other movie where it was like, yay, Paul wins at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, I completely get that. It still misunderstands that, but it's still to the point of like if they were to redo Dune in 30 years from now with new technology and actually paint Paul in that light where it's like, yeah, no, this is a Trumpian like figure that we should not be supporting. Like this is terrible. It that would be interesting to explore. People that like The Crow like the original.
Hmm.
They liked they didn't have any issues with the original. I don't think anyone was asking for, oh yeah, let's redo The Crow for this audience and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, wait, what? That these are just bad decisions all around. And it's just like, why are we doing this? There needs to be, and to your point, there needs to be more consideration to reboot things that didn't work as opposed to the things that did work.
Yeah.
And it's just like, because all you're doing is inviting nerds like us to really just kind of dissect everything and be like, this didn't work. It just sparks discussion that you really don't want.
No.
Versus like when they were like, okay, we're doing The Hobbit again. And you're like, okay, you could see why they would do The Hobbit. You know what I mean? Not that there wasn't an original
and
Hobbit.
I can see why they would try and do it again based on the 3 movies we got. So,
yes.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, sure, you could remake that shit, but don't, like, if you're doing The Crow, I said it already up top, you need to remember what attracts people to it, one, and two,
Yep.
what makes The Crow different than any other superhero or vengeance story that we've seen. And I can see they tried to change that by being like, well, it's not really about revenge, it's about righting wrongs. But then you removed the kid, you removed the cop, like you removed all these other human connections that Eric makes throughout the movie, even after he becomes the Crow, to keep him that way. And as you pointed out up top, the guilt that James O'Barr felt that he filtered through his comic is also gone. It's
completely gone.
Yeah.
And that to me is just like, what are we doing here? As far as I'm concerned, they just, and this is the I love that South Park makes this joke when Satan's trying to throw a Halloween party. He's like, no one can dress up as the Crow because everyone knows that the Crow is just hot, and hot guys are there dressed up as the Crow to try to hook up on Halloween night. And like the next scene, you see him dressed up as the Crow, which is hilarious to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually hilarious. Like it feels like that's what they did. They're like, hey, we like the aesthetic of the Crow.
Right.
And let's do that. And then that's the only idea that they had. It's just like, let's make this really pretty, but lacking of substance entirely.
Yeah, unfortunately. Sorry, do you want to say something else?
No, but I like the fact that you brought up the fact that, okay, Rupert Sanders might be in director jail, and that's why he was probably forced into something like this. So the question marks do remain.
I know that people are like, it's not that bad. The movie literally is like, oh, we made her white because we just feel like that would make her life better.
Yeah.
Like, that's why it's Scarlett Johansson. And that's like in the movie, not what the producer said. The movie is saying, well, why bring her back as an Asian when you could bring her back as a white person?
Yep.
And it's like, see, everyone was upset about this, and then you made the movie double down on it. So yeah, it's not good. But I know that wouldn't put someone like him in director jail. It's just how the movie performed that put him in director jail, not the fact that he was like, yeah, this seems like a good idea.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just the fact that it didn't pan out financially for them. If it did pan out financially for him, he wouldn't be in director jail.
No,
he'd be like, we'd be critiquing it and being like, this sucks that you made this decision. But if it made billions of dollars, then we'd be like, well, I guess we live in a sucky world, which we do.
Yeah, we do. Do you want to rate this movie?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Oh yeah, I'm at a 3. I'm at a 3.
Perfect. All right.
This was not entering the same level of enjoyment to me that Madam Web did, because we all know how much I love that.
You do want to keep that up.
I love that movie. Yeah. I love that movie so much. It's great.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you like that movie. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. You can listen to us on all the major podcast platforms, and we're on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@TDFspoiled. You can find us at TDF Spoiled on all the social media platforms we're on. That's Instagram, Twitter, Threads. And our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com, so you can get in touch with us. And please remember to rate, review, subscribe, follow, share on all the podcast platforms that you like. Yeah. We'll be back. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.